Hi, in today's video, we're going to look at the replicated speaking questions of the IELTS exam of 22nd February. Well, of course, there were many questions that were asked, but in this video, I've picked one and let's discuss this question so that you have an idea of how to be prepared for your upcoming tests. So let's look at the question that appeared for one of our candidates on the 22nd of February. So this is a part 2 question. So you have the topic of the cue card on screen. It says, talk about a famous person you follow on social media. So two things we have to be careful here. One, it has to be a famous person. Okay, so that's one. Number two, this should be somebody on social media. Now, when you think of social media, what strikes you first? I'm sure it would be platforms like Facebook, Instagram, maybe Twitter, right? So, yes, out of these, which one would you choose to speak about? So, let's say you pick Instagram, which is perfectly fine. And you also have to choose a famous person. Now, probably you don't really follow any famous personality on Instagram or Facebook, but because you have a card like this, you have to speak by choosing one famous person. So, who could you possibly speak about? Of course, one good option to consider would be sports stars, sports personalities, and we know in India, cricket is almost everything. So you could speak about maybe Sachin Tendulkar or Virat Kohli or any one of your favorite players who are big on social media, who are active on social media. You could also consider celebrities. Now that is quite an easy option. When you take up celebrities, you can easily think of a lot of film stars. Maybe someone like Priyanka Chopra, Brad Pitt, or anyone from your regional language. Somebody you think is very active and you love listening to probably their interviews or their take on different things that they share about. You could also consider vloggers who are popular. So that could be a very good option when you speak about somebody famous. You could also think of maybe authors. You could think of maybe politicians, like say you follow Shashi Tharoor on Instagram and you like the way he speaks. So yes, that could be a choice. So in this card, you have to first choose a famous person, plus also ensure that famous person is present on social media. And I would say 99% of the famous personalities are already on social media. So you should be able to easily choose one among these options that I've given you. Now you have 1 minute to prepare, and based on that time, you look at these sub questions that accompany the main topic, who that person is. So of course you introduce Virat Kohli, and then you say just Virat Kohli is not enough. You have to say something about who Virat Kohli is, how you know him or her. So you could maybe talk about your first time when you started watching matches played by Virat Kohli, how you felt about it, how long ago was that, what were you doing at that particular time, were you in school, were you in college, were you working, and then what is this person famous for. So here we speak about cricket, and that could be a reason. Or see, it need not be like, let's say celebrities, we have certain film stars who are not probably famous because of the films they do, but because of the kind of controversies they create. So that could be a reason for why they're popular. So it's not that they give big blockbusters in movies, but because they end up saying something controversial every time and are always there on news. And that could be the reason for why they're famous and why you like following them and getting to know about them. And then why do you follow this person? Of course, one reason is already because the reason why they're famous. Maybe it could be about matches he plays, it could be about the let's say social initiatives that they have taken up, or maybe about, he or she is a brand ambassador for certain products, and you love the way they put them, put themselves out there in front of people, how they share their opinions, their interviews. You love watching their interviews. So whatever the reason is, why do you follow? It could also be, you have these maybe people who help us with a lot of things, like you have these motivational speakers. Sometimes it could also be, stand-up comedians you follow on one of these social media apps. So this is how you can select a person you go to speak on, and you speak for around 2 minutes. So this was one card that appeared recently in our exam. So it's always good to be prepared with this topic, because these questions repeat very often. Now we'll also see what were the follow-up questions. Now this was a cue card. Now we know in part 3 of speaking you have the follow-up questions. Now because it's about a famous personality on social media, you could have related content as the follow-up questions in part 3 of speaking. So this is one sample that we had, and the question was, what are the different types of media that are popular nowadays? So cue card, we spoke about social media. Now the follow-up question asks the candidate the different types of media that are popular. Okay. Now this is one area. Remember, media is already in the plural form, so never add the s there, and the singular form of this is medium. So keep this in mind, as you might make very silly mistakes. So what are the different types of media? One, of course, you can speak about social media. Okay, maybe you have digital media. You could speak about a media, because it's a medium for communication, for interaction. You could speak about newspapers probably. You can speak about radio, TV. You can speak about channels like YouTube, which helps you put up content. So these are some of the types of media that are popular nowadays. But it is not just enough for you to list out these media. Why? Because the question is, of course, what are the different types of media? And you cannot just say, well, the different types of social media, digital media, newspaper, TV, radio, and YouTube channels. No. Remember, in part 3 of speaking, we are expected to give longer responses. You should be able to put in your opinion, add examples where relevant, and give opinionated responses. So that's what is expected. Now part 3 is the most challenging part of your speaking, and the challenge increases from part 1 to 2 to 3. So let's look at a sample of how you can structure this response. Even if you've made a list of these in mind, how do you include this in your response and give a well-rounded, relevant response to the question? Here is a sample for you to consider. So it says, yeah, I think that nowadays there are tons of media options. Look at the way it is introduced. Instead of saying there are different types of media options, which is already given in the question, they're using a paraphrased version of that. Tons of media options that really suit different tastes and lifestyles. Social media platforms like, look at this usage, like. When we speak, we normally use words like, such as, okay? So social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok are super popular because they let people share what's happening in their lives, connect with friends, and keep up with the latest trends. So you can see one medium is introduced here, social media, and a bit of explanation. Examples are included. What is social media? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and why it is popular. Because it lets people share what's happening in their lives and so on. Number 2, you can see plus. What does the word plus mean? What does it mean? It means in addition to, or number 2. So this is the second point. Plus, streaming services like, or streaming platforms like Netflix, Hotstar, and Amazon Prime have totally changed how we watch movies and TV shows by letting us choose what to watch whenever we want. So that's number 2. Third, I'd also say that. I would also say that. Remember, in your speaking, you're going to use contractions because it's mostly informal speaking that you need to have, not like the written format where you're very formal or academic, in style and tone. I'd also say, that means number 3, I'd also say traditional media like TV channels, radio stations, and newspapers. So these 3 are clubbed here, still have their place, especially when it comes to local news or more in-depth reporting. Number 4, you can see, what is it? Digital news sites and blogs have grown a lot too, providing real-time updates and contents that's really relevant. Another cool trend, podcasts. 5, another cool trend. See how it is being introduced? Plus, I'd also say that another cool trend, and still have their place and so on. YouTube is huge as well. Number 6, YouTube is huge as well. Not just for funny videos, but for tutorials and lifestyle vlogs that help us learn new things. Here there's an example. For example, I often watch YouTube channels that share simple yet interesting recipes, helping me try something new every time and giving my taste buds reasons to enjoy food. So, a very short example is given here. So you can see there is a listing here actually of 6 different types of media, but it is not just blindly listing them, but pulling out each point one by one and connecting it with examples and real life scenarios and reasons for what makes them popular. Let's look at the second follow-up question. What are the reasons for radio becoming less popular? This is clearly an opinionated question because the opinion is already given here. Radio becoming less popular. So they're already saying that radio is less popular. Now we have to mention the reasons for it. Now sometimes we might feel that radio is not less popular, in which case you can mention that and give your reasons for it. But if you feel yes, when compared to the past, radio is much less popular these days, here is a sample response to that. So I start saying, well, I think one big reason, so starting off with the reason, I agree with the idea that yes, radio is less popular. So there's no question of disagreeing here or sharing another opinion on this. I think one big reason is that digital media has really taken over. Reason 1, especially with the popularity of streaming apps and podcasts. In India, many people now use apps like Gaana, JioSaavn and Spotify. Now look, in the first example, I spoke about Netflix, I spoke about Hotstar, but here I'm not repeating those examples and I'm using some other examples that are relevant. So I'm not repeating my ideas. I used examples for streaming apps like Gaana, JioSaavn or Spotify to listen to music on demand. Also, smartphones are everywhere these days, so it's just easier for folks to grab their phone and choose exactly what they want to listen to. That is, 1 is streaming apps, 2 smartphones, second reason. Third, another factor is that radio stations sometimes struggle to keep their content fresh and engaging, which means they often lose out more to interactive platforms like social media. So here there's a comparison. Why radio loses out on its prominence? Because of social media. And why? Because social media, they are interactive. For instance, you can see how an example has been introduced here. While radio offers one-way communication, platforms like YouTube or even Instagram give listeners a chance to comment, share and interact. In urban areas such as Delhi or Bangalore, the convenience of personalized content has really impacted radio's relevance. Plus, number 4, many younger people feel that radio doesn't really cater to their tastes anymore. Cater does not live up to or meet, or engage to their tastes anymore compared to the curated playlists on digital apps. Curated playlists that we can save depending on, let's say, our mood, our choice and different things. So we have different categories that we can have. Overall, the blend of technology and changing listener habits has made radio a bit outdated, less popular, bit outdated in today's fast-paced world. So this is a good sample for you to follow. You can see there are lots of different connectors used. There's a very thoughtful paraphrasing that's done, and for each reason there's an explanation given. So this is how you need to develop your speaking part 3 answers. Let's look at another question, another follow-up question. Do you think this will happen to newspapers as well? So what is this? Radio is becoming less popular, so will newspapers lose their popularity? So here, do you think? So first you have to state your opinion. You have to either say yes and say why, or you say no and say why not. So make sure you answer that, respond to the question. Let's look at a sample. It says, yeah, I believe newspapers might face a similar trend, though it could happen more gradually. So I accept the fact, yes, newspapers might be less popular in future, but not just now. It might take a few more years, right? With smartphones becoming a part of daily life, many people in India now prefer getting their news online instead of waiting for morning newspaper. I've noticed that apps like InShots, again examples, or the official news apps of major channels are becoming really popular among friends and family. Moreover, adding to that, the younger generation is especially inclined towards digital news. That said, newspapers still hold a special place among older readers and in smaller towns. Nevertheless, even in those areas, the convenience and immediacy of online news is slowly making an impact. To cite an example, many regional newspapers are now also offering digital editions. So here they gave a reason saying maybe in local areas, smaller areas, newspapers could still be popular, but they say nevertheless there are examples where even the local newspapers have their digital versions, which means people prefer digital versions more when compared to the printed version of it. All in all, while I don't think newspapers will disappear completely anytime soon, they definitely need to innovate to stay relevant in the digital era. So here there is a well-rounded, thought of response to this. Yes, you can clearly see that I agree with the opinion saying yeah, newspapers will definitely lose popularity, but not anytime soon, maybe a few years down the lane. Okay, so did you get an idea of how you can structure your part 3 answers in your speaking? Well, I'm going to show you 3 other questions and I want you to try and think of answers for these possible questions. What are the reasons behind popularity of social media? Is this because of the accessibility of social media? And the 6th question, should social media be used to share important information? Now, the ball is in your court. It's time for you to put on your thinking hats and come up with good responses for these 3 questions. And you'd like to share, if you'd like to share your response, do add them as comments below this video. And be prepared with these questions because all of these questions might mostly happen even in the upcoming IELTS speaking exams. So thank you and hope this video on the replicated questions, speaking questions of 22nd February was useful.
MedCity International Academy. Trusted hands forever.